Skills in the d20 game. If you buy a class skill, your character gets 1 rank equal to a +1 bonus on checks with that skill. For each skill point. So if you buy a class skill, your character gets 1 rank for each skill point. +1 bonus on checks with that skill. If you buy up classes skills, cross-class skills, you get 1/2 rank per skill point. Character class descriptions indicate which skills can be purchased as class skills and how many skill points modified by a character's intelligence modifier to a minimum of 1 per level are gained when a character takes a level in that class. So character class descriptions indicate which skills can be purchased as class skills and how many skill points are gained when a character takes a level in that class, modified by a character's intelligence modifier to a minimum of 1 per level. Your maximum rank in a class skill is your character level +3. Your maximum rank in a cross-class skill is 1/2 this number. Do not round up or down. Using skills to make a skill check, roll 1 d20 plus skill modifier. Skill modifier equals skill rank plus ability modifier plus miscellaneous modifiers. This roll works just like an attack roll or a saving throw. Make a skill check. It works just like an attack roll or a saving throw. The higher the roll, the better. Either a character is trying to match or exceed a certain difficulty class, or he or she is trying to beat another character's check result. Skill ranks. A character's number of ranks in a skill is based on how many skill points a character has invested in a skill. Many skills can be used even if the character has no ranks in them. Doing this is called making an untrained skill check. Number of ranks in a skill based on how many skill points a character has invested in a skill. Ability modifier. The ability modifier used in a skill check is the modifier for the skill's key ability, the ability associated with the skill's use. The ability modifier used in a skill check is the modifier for the skill's key ability, the ability associated with the skill's use. The key ability of each skill is noted in its description. Miscellaneous modifiers. Miscellaneous modifiers include racial bonuses, armor check penalties, and bonuses provided by feats, among others. Miscellaneous modifiers include racial bonuses, armor check penalties, bonuses provided by feats, among others. Each skill point you spend on a class skill gets you 1 rank in that skill. Class skills are the skills found on your character's class skill list. Each skill point you spend on a cross-class skill gets your character 1/2 rank in that skill. Cross-class skills are skills not found on your character's class skill list. And that's what I like about Skyrim. It's just whatever you do builds up your points. You spend it in the skill tree, and you can choose to be mediocre at everything or go up and skill up in one particular thing or another. And that determines it's kind of more fluid. Skyrim's the character's class skill list. 1/2 ranks do not improve your skill check, but 2 1/2 ranks make 1 rank. You cannot have skill points to spend later. The maximum rank in a class skill is the character's level +3. The maximum rank in a class skill, character's level +3. If it's a cross-class skill, the maximum rank is half of that number. Do not round up or down. Regardless of whether a skill is purchased as a class skill or a cross-class skill, if it is a class skill for any of your classes, your maximum rank equals your total character level +3. Class skill for any of your classes, maximum rank equals your total character level +3. Using a skill. When a character uses a skill, the player makes a skill check to see how well he or she does. The higher the result of the skill check, the better. Based on the circumstances, the result must match or beat a particular number, a DC, or the result of an opposed skill check, for the check to be successful. The harder the task, the higher the number a player needs to roll. Circumstances can affect this check. A character that is free to work without distractions can make a careful attempt and avoid simple mistakes. A character who has lots of time can try over and over again, thereby assuring the best outcome. If others help, the character may succeed where otherwise he or she would fail. And they're part of inspiration. Skill checks. A skill check takes into account a character's training, skill rank, natural talent, ability modifier, and luck, the die roll. It may also take into account his or her race's knack for doing certain things, racial bonus, or what armor he or she is wearing, armor check penalty, for a certain feat the character possesses, among other things. To make a skill check, roll 1d20 and add your character's skill modifier for that skill. The skill modifier incorporates the character's ranks in that skill and the ability modifier for that skill's key ability, plus any other miscellaneous modifiers that may apply, including racial bonuses and armor check penalties. Skill modifier incorporates character ranks in that skill and the ability modifier for that skill's key ability, plus any other miscellaneous modifiers may apply, including armor check penalties. For the higher result, the higher the result, the better. Unlike with attack rolls and saving throws, a natural roll of 20 on the d20 is not an automatic success, and a natural roll of 1 is not an automatic failure. Unlike with attack rolls and saving throws. Skill checks. Difficulty class examples. Difficulty DC, difficulty class. Example. Skill use. Very easy, 0. Notice something large in plain sight. Spot. Easy, 5. Climb a knotted rope. Climb. Average, 10. Hear an approaching guard. Listen. Tough, 15. Rig a wagon wheel to fall off. Disable device. Spot. Climb. Listen. Disable device. Challenging, 20. Swim in stormy water. Swim. Formidable, 25. Open an average lock. Open lock. Heroic, 30. Leap across a 30-foot chasm. Jump. Nearly impossible. Herculean feat, 40. Trek a squad of orcs across hard ground after 24 hours of rainfall. Survival. That's a survival skill check. Trek a squad of orcs across hard ground after 24 hours of rainfall. Like what Aragorn was doing. Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli were doing that. For like half the second movie. Half the second movie. difficulty class. Some checks are made against a difficulty class, DC. The DC is a number set using the skill rules as a guidance that you must score as a result on your skill check in order to succeed. Opposed checks. An opposed check is a check whose success or failure is determined. Opposed check is determined by comparing the check result to another character's check result. In an opposed check, the higher result succeeds, while the lower result fails. In case of a tie, the higher skill modifier wins. If these scores are the same, roll again to break the tie. Trying again. In general, a character can try a skill check again if he or she fails and can keep trying indefinitely. Some skills, however, have consequences of failure that must be taken into account. A few skills are virtually useless once a check has failed on an attempt to accomplish a particular task. For most skills, when a character has succeeded once at a given task, additional successes are meaningless. Untrained skill checks. Generally, if your character attempts to use a skill he or she does not possess, you make a skill check as normal. The skill modifier doesn't have a skill rank added in because the character has no ranks in the skill. Any other applicable modifiers, such as the modifier for the skill's key ability, are applied to the check. Many skills can be used only by someone who is trained in them. A character cannot attempt a check using a skill that cannot be used untrained. Favorable and unfavorable conditions. Some situations may make a skill easier or harder to use, resulting in a bonus penalty to the skill modifier for a skill check or a change to the DC of the skill check. The chance of success can be altered in 4 ways to take into account exceptional circumstances. Give the skill user a +2 circumstance bonus to represent conditions that improve performance, such as having the perfect tool for the job, getting help from another character, see combining skill attempts, or possessing unusually accurate information. Give the skill user a -2 circumstance penalty to represent conditions that hamper performance, such as being forced to use improvised tools or having misleading information. Reduce the DC by 2 to represent circumstances that make the task easier, such as having a friendly audience or doing work that does not have to be done up to a basic standard. Increase the DC by 2 to represent circumstances that make the task harder, such as having an uncooperative audience or doing work that must be flawless. Conditions that affect your character's ability to perform the skill change the skill modifier. Conditions that modify how well the character has to perform the skill to succeed change the DC. A bonus to the skill modifier and a reduction in the check's DC have the same result. They create a better chance of success, but they represent different circumstances, and sometimes that difference is important. And yesterday, I had this dirty towel and I just threw it and it landed perfectly on top of that exercise machine. Like that, rolling natural. Example: opposed checks. Task: con someone. Skill: key ability. Bluff: charisma. Opening skill: key ability. Sense motive: wisdom. Task: pretend to be someone else. Skill: disguise. Key ability: charisma. Opposing skill: spot, wisdom. Create a false map. Skill: forgery, intelligence. Opposing skill, key ability, forgery, intelligence. Hide from someone. Hide, dexterity. Spot, wisdom. Make a bully back down. Intimidate, charisma. Special 1. An intimidate check is opposed by the target's level check, not a skill check. See the intimidate skill description for more information. Sneak up on someone. Move silently, dexterity. Spud, wisdom. Steal a coin pouch. Sleight of hand, dexterity. And spud, wisdom. Tie a prisoner securely. Use rope, dexterity. Escape artist, dexterity. Okay, so in 3, use rope is still its own skill. And track a squad of orcs across hard ground in 24 hours. Rainfall is survival. Conditions affected ability to perform the skill. Change the skill modifier. And conditions that modify how well the character has to perform the skill to succeed, change the DC. A bonus to the skill modifier and a reduction in the check's DC have the same result. They create a better chance of success in different circumstances. Time and skill checks. Using a skill might take a round, take no time, or take several rounds or even longer. Most skill uses are standard actions, move actions, or full round actions. Types of actions define how long activities take to perform within the framework of a combat round, 6 seconds, and how movement is treated with respect to the activity. Some skill checks are instant and represent reactions to an event, or are included as part of an action. These skill checks are not actions. Other skill checks represent part of movement. Types of actions define how long activities take to perform within the framework of a combat round, and how movement is treated with respect to the activity. Some skill checks are instant and represent reactions to an event, or included as part of an action. These skill checks are not actions. Other skill checks represent part of movement. Checks without rolls. A skill check represents an attempt to accomplish some goal usually while under some sort of time pressure or distraction. Sometimes, though, a character can use a skill under more favorable conditions and eliminate the luck factor. Taking 10. When your character is not being threatened or distracted, you may choose to take 10 instead of rolling 1d20 for the skill check to calculate your result as if you had rolled a 10. For many routine tasks, taking 10 makes them automatically successful. Distractions or threats, such as combat, make it impossible for a character to take 10. In most cases, taking 10 is purely a safety measure. You know or expect that an average roll will succeed, but fear that a poor roll might fail. So you elect to settle for the average roll at 10. Taking 10 is especially useful in situations where a particularly high roll wouldn't necessarily help. Taking 20. When you have plenty of time, generally 2 minutes for a skill that can normally be checked in one round. Plenty of time, generally 2 minutes for a skill that can normally be checked in one round. One full round action or one standard action. One full round action. You are faced with no threats or distractions, and the skill being attempted carries no penalties for failure. You can take 20. In other words, eventually you will get a 20 on 1d20 if you roll enough times. Instead of rolling 1d20 for the skill check, just calculate your result as if you had rolled a 20. Taking 20 means you are trying until you get it right, and it assumes that you fail many times before succeeding. Taking 20 takes 20 times as long as making a single check would take. Since taking 20 assumes that the character will fail many times before succeeding, if you did attempt to take 20 on a skill that carries penalties for failure, your character would automatically incur those penalties before he or she could complete the task. Common take 20 skills include Escape Artist, Open Lock, and Search. You might run out of lockpicks in Skyrim and stuff. Ability checks and caster level checks. The normal take 10 and take 20 rules apply for ability checks. Neither rule applies to caster level checks. Combining skill checks. When more than one character tries the same skill at the same time and for the same purpose, their efforts may overlap. This can be done in several different ways. Each combination is adjudicated using its own set of rules. Individual events. Often several characters attempt some action, and each succeeds or fails independently. The result of one character's climb check does not influence the results of other characters' climb check. Aid another. You can help another character achieve success on his or her skill check by making the same kind of skill check in a cooperative effort. If you roll a 10 or higher on your check, the character you are helping gets a +2 bonus to his or her check, as per the rule for favorable conditions. You cannot take 10 on a skill check to aid another. In many cases, a character's help will not be beneficial, or only a limited number of characters can help at once. In cases where the skill restricts who can achieve certain results, you cannot aid another to grant a bonus to a task that your character couldn't achieve alone. That's just skill checks. It does not include bardic inspiration. Two characters can, skin the bear that they just killed. Skill synergy. It's possible for a character to have two skills that work well together. In general, having 5 or more ranks in one skill gives the character a +2 bonus on skill checks with each of its synergistic skills, as noted in the skill description. In some cases, this bonus applies only to specific uses of the skill in question and not to all checks. Some skills provide benefits on other checks made by a character, such as those checks required to use certain class features. Some skills provide benefits on other checks made by a character. Ability checks. Sometimes a character tries to do something to which no specific skill really applies. In these cases, you make an ability check. An ability check is a roll of 1d20 plus the appropriate ability modifier. Essentially, you are making an untrained skill check. Character tries to do something with no specific skill really applies. In these cases, you make an ability check. An ability check is a roll of 1d20 plus the appropriate ability modifier. Essentially, you are making an untrained skill check, since using a skill that a character does not have any skill ranks in is effectively an unmodified ability check. In some cases, an action is a straight test of one's ability with no luck involved. Just as characters would not make a height check to see who is taller, they would also not make strength checks to see who is stronger. I mean, unless they are arm wrestling. The games master is responsible for determining what situations call for ability checks, which ones have skill checks as a more appropriate method of adjudication, and when rolls are not required at all. Ability check. So this is not a skill ability check. Untrained skill check. Mm-hmm. Game master is responsible for determining situations call for ability checks or skill checks. Skill descriptions. This section describes each skill, including common uses and typical modifiers. Characters can sometimes use skills for purposes other than those noted here. Here is the format for skill descriptions. Skill name. The skill name line includes, in addition to the name of the skill, the following information. Skill name line includes the following, in addition to the name of the skill. Key ability. The abbreviation of the ability whose modifier applies to the skill check. Exception. Speak language has none as its key ability because the use of this skill does not require a check. Trained only. If this notation is included in the skill name line, you must have at least one rank in the skill to use it. If it is omitted, the skill can be used untrained with a rank of 0. If any special notes apply to trained or untrained use, they are covered in the untrained section. See below. Armor check penalty. If this notation is included in the skill name line, an armor check penalty applies, when appropriate, to checks using this skill. If this entry is absent, an armor check penalty does not apply. The skill name line is followed by a general description of what using the skill represents. After the description are a few other types of information. Check. What a character, you in the skill description, what a character can do with a successful skill check and the check's DC. Action. The type of action using this skill requires, or the amount of time required for a check. Try again. Any conditions that apply to successive attempts to use the skill successfully. If the skill doesn't allow you to attempt the same task more than once, or if failure carries an inherent penalty, such as with a climb skill, you cannot take 20. If this paragraph is omitted, the skill can be retried without any inherent penalty other than the additional time required. It just takes more time. Try again. The skill doesn't allow you to attempt the same. Any conditions that apply to successful attempts to use the skill successfully. Special. Any extra facts that apply to the skill. Special. Any extra facts that apply to the skill, such as special effects deriving from its use, or bonuses that certain characters receive because of class, feat choices, or race. Synergy. War was special. 5 is synergy. Some skills grant a bonus to use. Hey. Special. Any extra effects that apply to the skill, such as special effects deriving from its use or bonuses that certain characters receive because of class, feat choices, or race. Synergy. Some skills grant a bonus to the use of one or more other skills because of a synergistic effect. This entry, when present, indicates a bonus the skill may grant or receive because of synergies. See Table 4 to 5 for a complete list of bonuses granted by synergy between skills or between a skill and a class feature. I'm aiming this right. Narrow surface. Okay, this is balance DC. Difficult surface, balance DC. This is another. Bluff, line. Three, two. Restriction. The full utility of certain skills is restricted to characters of certain classes or characters who possess certain feats. This entry indicates whether any such restrictions exist for the skill. Untrained. This entry indicates what a character without at least one rank in the skill can do with it. If this entry doesn't appear, it means the skill functions normally for untrained characters. If it can be used untrained, or that an untrained character cannot attempt checks with this skill for skills that are designated as trained only. That's better. Appraise. Intelligence. Check. You can appraise common or well-known objects with a DC 12 appraise check. Failure means you estimate the value at 50 to 150%. 50% to 150%. So you get the appraisal like wildly wrong. 2d6 plus 3 times 10% of its actual value. Appraising a rare or exotic item requires a successful check against DC 15, 20, or higher. If the check is successful, you estimate the value correctly. Failure means you cannot estimate the item's value. A magnifying glass gives you a +2 circumstance bonus on appraise checks involving any item that is small or highly detailed. A merchant skill gives you a +2 circumstance bonus on appraise checks involving any items that are valued by weight, including anything made of precious metals. These bonuses stack. So, say there's a little shop, a little antique shop, and the thief breaks in. He could probably appraise the items in there using the merchant's wares and equipment. But, the thief rogue could, but other characters probably can't just bust into the shop and know how to use their stuff. Action. Appraising an item takes 1 minute. 10 consecutive full round actions. Try again. No, you cannot try again on the same object regardless of success. You can keep staring at the gem, but it's not, you're not going to get any better at telling what it is. I can see where you might be you're looking at it, it's coming to you, and then you realize it. Yeah, you just got to take your time. I guess you can tell the DM you want to take your time and look really good at it. Special. A dwarf takes a +2 racial bonus on appraise checks that are related to stone or metal items because dwarves are familiar with valuable items of all kinds, especially those made of stone or metal. So if the bards bust into a shop, the dwarf will be able to tell. A master of a raven familiar gains a +3 bonus on appraise checks. A character with the diligent feat gets a +2 bonus on appraise checks. A raven familiar and diligent. Sounds cool. Raven familiar. That's kind of awesome. A character with the diligence. Oh yeah, synergy. If you have 5 ranks in any craft skill, you can gain a +2 bonus on appraise checks related to items made with that craft skill. So a leather worker can get a +2 bonus on appraise checks of leather crafted items. Untrained. For common items, failure on an untrained check means no estimate. For rare items, success means an estimate of 50% to 150%. 2d6 plus 3 times 10%. Balance. Dexterity. Armor check penalty. Check. You can walk on a precarious surface. A successful check lets you move at half your speed along the surface for 1 round. A failure by 4 or less means you cannot move for 1 round. A failure by 5 or more means you fall. The difficulty varies with the surface, as shown below. Narrow surface, 7 to 12 inches wide, or 2 to 6 inches wide, or less than 2 inches wide. Balance, DC, 10, 15, 20. Difficult surface, uneven flagstone, hewn stone floor, sloped or angled floor. Balance, DC, 10, 2, 10, 2, 10, 2. Okay, so balance DC has a 1 by it. 1 means add modifiers from narrow surface modifiers below as appropriate. And then 2, only if running or charging. Failure by 4 or less means the character cannot run or charge but may otherwise act normally. Narrow surface modifier. Surface DC modifier. And 1. Add the appropriate modifier to the balance DC of a narrow surface. These modifiers stack. The surface lightly obstructed, DC modifier +2, and add the appropriate modifier to balance DC of a narrow surface. Lightly obstructed, severely obstructed, +5. Lightly slippery, +2. Severely slippery, +5. Sloped or angled, +2. Being attacked while balancing. You are considered flat-footed while balancing since you cannot move to avoid a blow, and thus you lose your dexterity bonus to AC, if any. If you have 5 or more ranks in balance, you aren't considered flat-footed while balancing. I guess as opposed to being on your toes. If you take damage while balancing, you must make another against the same DC to remain standing. Accelerated movement. You can try to walk across a precarious surface more quickly than normal. Probably have to stomp real good. If you accept a -5 penalty, you can move your full speed as a move action. Moving twice your speed in a round requires 2 balance checks, 1 for each move action used. You may also accept this penalty in order to charge across a precarious surface. Charging requires 1 balance check for each multiple of your speed, or fraction thereof, that you charge. Okay. Twice your speed requires 2 balance checks, 1 for each move action used. So it's both of your feet being checked. Action. None. A balance check doesn't require an action. It's made as part of another action or as a reaction to a situation. Hmm. 8. Take one. Sterling. Special. If you have the agile feat, you get a +2 bonus on balance checks. Synergy. If you have 5 or more ranks in tumble, then you get a +2 bonus on balance checks. You can see a character who's probably some noble lady who is a gymnast in the world's version of Olympic Games. Special. Tumble. Bluff. Charisma. Check. A bluff check is opposed by a target's sense motive check. You can't see my pole. A bluff check is opposed by the target's sense motive check. See the accompanying table for examples of different kinds of bluffs and the modifier to the target's sense motive check for each one. So the characters are all playing cards and bluffing each other. Characters are all playing cards. A bluff check is opposed by the target's sense motive check. Which, if they play in cards, then their sense motive is, okay, they're playing cards against me. They probably have a good hand, or they probably have a bad hand. We're playing. Okay. Everybody's motivated to win. Everybody knows that everybody else is motivated to win. It's game theory. Yeah, I'd love to write a story exploring game theory via characters playing cards. Great. Let's check for each one. Favorable and unfavorable circumstances weigh heavily on the outcome of a bluff. Two circumstances can weigh against you. The bluff is hard to believe, or the action that the target is asked to take goes against its self-interest, nature, personality, orders, or the like. If it's important, you can distinguish between a bluff that fails because the target doesn't believe it and one that fails because it just asks too much of the target. For instance, if the target gets a +10 bonus on its sense motive check because the bluff demands something risky, and the sense motive check succeeds by 10 or less, and the target didn't so much see through the bluff as prove reluctant to go along with it. A target that succeeds by 11 or more has seen through the bluff. You're bluffing someone to do something risky. It's harder. A successful bluff check indicates that the target reacts as you wish, at least for a short time, usually one round or less, or believes something that you want it to believe. Bluff, however, is not a suggestion spell. A bluff often. A bluff requires interaction between you and the target. Creatures unaware of you cannot be bluffed. Fainting in combat. You can also use bluff to mislead an opponent in melee combat so that it cannot dodge your next attack effectively. To feint, make a bluff check opposed by your target's sense motive check, but in this case, the target may add its base attack bonus to the roll, along with any other applicable modifiers. If your bluff check result exceeds this special sense motive check result, your target is denied its dexterity bonus to AC, if any, for the next melee attack you make against it. This attack must be made on or before your next turn. Okay, so you make like you're gonna do one move and you do another move, taking their opponent by surprise, and it's denied its dexterity bonus to armor class. If they react to what they thought you were gonna do. Feinting in this way against a non-humanoid is difficult because it's harder to read a strange creature's body language. You'll take a -4 penalty to your bluff check. Against a creature of animal intelligence 1 or 2, it's even harder. You take a -8 penalty. Against a non-intelligent creature, it's impossible. Feinting in combat does not provoke an attack of opportunity. Ooh, that's good. Bluff examples. Example circumstances since motive modifier. The target wants to believe. Since motive modifier -5. The bluff is believable and doesn't affect the target much. +0. The bluff is a little hard to believe or puts the target at some risk. +5. The bluff is hard to believe but puts the target at significant risk. +10. The bluff is way out there, almost too incredible to consider. +20. Creating a diversion to hide. You can use the bluff skill to help you hide. A successful bluff check gives you the momentary diversion you need to attempt a hide check while people are aware of you. This usage does not provoke an attack of opportunity. Delivering a secret message. You can use bluff to get a message across to another character without the others understanding it. The DC is 15 for simple messages or 20 for complex messages, especially those that rely on getting across new information. Alright, so you speak a certain phrase to this person who already knows that you were going to say one of two or three things, and that they understand your message ahead of time. Yeah, then it works better. Failure by 4 or less means you cannot get the message across. Failure by 5 or more means that some false information has been implied or inferred. Anyone listening to the exchange can make a sense motive check opposed by the bluff check you made to transmit in order to intercept your message. See sense motive. Action. Varies. A bluff check made as part of general interaction always takes at least one round and is at least a full round action, but it can take much longer if you try something elaborate. A bluff check made to feint in combat or create a diversion to hide is a standard action. A bluff check made to deliver a secret message doesn't take an action. It is part of normal communication. Try again. Varies. Generally, a failed bluff check in social interaction makes the target too suspicious for you to try again in the same circumstances. But you may retry freely on bluff checks made to feint in combat. Retries are also allowed when you are trying to send a message, but you may attempt such a retry only once per round. Each retry carries the same chance of miscommunication. Special. A ranger gains a bonus on bluff checks when using this skill against a favored enemy. The master of a snake familiar gains a +3 bonus on bluff checks. Snake familiar. That's neat. Card player with a past snake. Oh, I just saw Red Dead Redemption. If you have the persuasive feat, you get a +2 bonus on bluff checks. Red Dead Revolver was a good game too. It was all about playing cards, like shooting them. It's an interesting game. Red Dead Revolver. Synergy. If you have 5 or more ranks in bluff, you get a +2 bonus on diplomacy, intimidate, and sleight of hand checks, as well as on disguise checks made when you know you're being observed and you try to act in character. +2 bonus on diplomacy, intimidate, and sleight of hand checks. So a rogue character would be real good at that. This. The Princess Lion Lady definitely needs to know how to bluff. Climb. Strength. Armor check penalty. Check. With a successful climb check, you can advance up, down, or across a slope, a wall, or some other steep incline, or even a ceiling with handholds. character who comes across a rock wall gym. Rock wall room in that gym. At 1/4 your normal speed. A slope is considered to be any incline at an angle measuring less than 60 degrees. A wall is any incline at an angle measuring 60 degrees or more. A climb check that fails by 4 or less, nope. And one that fails by 5 or more means you fall from whatever height you have already attained. A climber's kit gives you a +2 circumstance bonus on climb checks. Climber's kit. I'm going to have to make a card for a climber's kit. A little grid showing what each thing in the kit is. The DC of the check. Yeah, I'll use the little squares for like spells, actions. Cards for items so they can have a description. Yeah, simple actions that don't require a description. We get smaller cards. The DC of the check depends on the conditions of the climb. Compare the task with those on the following table to determine appropriate DC. Difficult class. You need both hands free to climb, but you may cling to a wall with one hand while you cast a spell or take some other action that requires only one hand. While climbing, you cannot move to avoid a blow, so you lose your dexterity bonus to AC, if any. You also cannot use a shield while climbing. Just string it on your back, I guess. Climb DC, example surface, 0. A slope too steep to walk up or a knotted rope with a wall to brace against. 5. A rope with a wall to brace against or a knotted rope or rope affected by the rope trick spell. 10. A surface with ledges to hold on to and stand on, such as a very rough wall or a ship's rigging. Ooh, ships. 15. Any surface with adequate handholds and footholds, natural or artificial, such as a very rough natural rock surface or a tree, or an unknotted rope, or pulling yourself up when dangling by your hands. 20. An uneven surface with some narrow handholds and footholds, such as a typical wall in a dungeon or ruins. 25. A rough surface, such as a natural rock wall or a brick wall. 25. An overhang or ceiling with handholds but no footholds. A perfectly smooth, flat, vertical surface cannot be climbed. Climb DC modifier. Warning, these modifiers are cumulative. Use any that apply. Example surface activity. -10. Climbing a chimney, artificial or natural, or other location where you can brace against 2 opposite walls. Reduces DC by 10. -5. Climbing a corner where you can brace against perpendicular walls. Reduces DC by 5. +5. Surface is slippery. Increases DC by 5. Anytime you take damage while climbing, make a climb check against the DC of the slope or wall. Failure means you fall from your current height and sustain the appropriate falling damage. Struck by an arrow would probably be a bad thing. Accelerated climbing. You try to climb more quickly than normal. By accepting a -5 penalty, you can move half your speed instead of 1/4 your speed. making your own handholds and footholds. You can make your own handholds and footholds by pounding pittons into a wall. Doing so takes 1 minute per pitton, and 1 pitton is needed per 3 feet of distance. As with any surface that offers handholds and footholds, a wall with pittons in it has a DC of 15. In the same way, a climber with a hand axe or similar implement can cut handholds in an ice wall. Yeah, I thought of the movie The Cave, where they going in there and placing their pittons and their ropes and climbing all around the cave, and they're attacked by the winged creatures. Yeah, that's a good movie. Good, scary old movie. Catching yourself when falling. It's practically impossible to catch yourself on a wall while falling. Make a climb check, DC equals walls DC plus 20 to do so. It's much easier to catch yourself on a slope, DC equals the slope's DC plus 10. You should probably have to do some mathematics right there. I can see writing up a scenario in which you have to do some mathematical calculations. Slopes and angles and geometry, and also for muscles and denseness and strength checks. It's a good idea. Catching a falling character while climbing. If someone climbing above you or adjacent to you falls, you can attempt to catch the fallen character if he or she is within your reach. Doing so requires a successful melee touch attack against the falling character, though he or she can voluntarily forego any dexterity bonus to AC if desired. Successful melee touch attack against the falling character. If you hit, you must immediately accept a climb check. DC equals walls DC plus 10. Success indicates that you catch the fallen character, but his or her total weight, including equipment, cannot exceed your heavy load limit or you automatically fall. I can definitely see this being a good math lesson right here. If you fail your climb check by 4 or less, you fail to stop the character's fall, but don't lose your grip on the wall. If you fail by 5 or more, you fail to stop the character's fall and begin falling as well. Action. Climbing is part of movement, so it's generally part of a move action and may be combined with other types of movement in a move action. Each move action that includes any climbing requires a separate climb check. Catching yourself or another falling character doesn't take an action. You should probably take a bonus action, reaction kind of thing. I don't know. Well, yeah, this falling and climbing thing would make for a great math lesson. Page 85. Page 86. Special. You can use a rope to haul a character upward or lower a character through sheer strength. You can lift double your maximum load in this manner. A halfling has a +2 racial bonus on climb checks because halflings are agile and sure-footed. The master of a lizard familiar gains a +3 bonus on climb checks. Halfling with a lizard. If it's a familiar in there, like a wizard or a sorcerer. If you have the athletic feat, you get a +2 bonus on climb checks. A creature with a climb speed has a +8 racial bonus on all climb checks. The creature must make a climb check to climb any wall or slope with a DC higher than 0, but it always can choose to take 10. Climb speed has a +8 racial bonus on all climb checks. The creature must make a climb check to climb any wall or slope with a DC higher than 0, but It always can choose to take 10 even if rushed or threatened while climbing. If a creature with a climb speed chooses an accelerated climb, it moves at double its climb speed or at its land speed, whichever is slower, and makes a single climb at a -5 penalty. Such a creature retains its dexterity bonus to armor class, if any, while climbing, and opponents get no special bonus to their attacks against it. It cannot, however, use the run action while climbing. The climb speed +8 racial bonus on all climb checks. Accelerated climb moves its double its climb speed or at its land speed, whichever is slower. I think the climbing speed is slower than land speed, unless land speed happens to be slower for some reason. If you have 5 or more ranks and use rope, you get a +2 bonus on climb checks made to climb a rope, a knotted rope, or a rope and wall combination. Nothing that knows rope trick. Concentration check. You must make a concentration check whenever you might potentially be distracted by taking damage, by harsh weather, and so on, while engaged in some action that requires your full attention. Such actions include casting a spell, concentrating on an active spell, directing a spell, using a spell-like ability, or using a skill that would provoke an attack of opportunity. In general, if an action wouldn't normally provoke an attack of opportunity, you need not make a concentration check to avoid being distracted. If the concentration check succeeds, you may continue with the action as normal. Fails. If you were in the process of casting a spell, the spell is lost. If you were concentrating on an active spell, the spell ends as if you had ceased concentrating on it. If you were directing a spell, the direction fails, but the spell remains active. If you were using a spell-like ability, the use of the ability is lost. A skill use also fails, and in some cases, a failed skill check may have other ramifications as well. A table on page 87 summarizes various types of distractions that cause you to make a concentration check. If the distraction occurs while you are trying to cast a spell, you must add the level of the spell you are trying to cast to the appropriate concentration DC. If more than one type of distraction is present, make a check for each one. Any failed concentration check indicates that the task is not completed. Action none. Making a concentration actively or part of another action when attempted actively. Try again. Yes, though a success doesn't cancel the effect of a previous failure, such as the loss of a spell you were casting or the disruption of a spell you were concentrating on. Special. You can use concentration to cast a spell, use a spell-like ability, or use a skill defensively, so as to avoid attacks of opportunity altogether. This doesn't apply to other actions that might provoke attacks of opportunity. The DC of the check is 15 plus the spell's level if casting a spell or using a spell-like ability defensively. If the concentration check succeeds, you may make the action normally, but provoke a successful concentration check still doesn't allow you to take 10 on another check if you are in a stressful situation. You must make the check normally. If the concentration check fails, The related action also automatically fails without any appropriate ramifications. And the action is wasted, just as if your concentration had been disrupted by a distraction. Attempt to action normally without provoking any attacks of opportunity. A successful concentration check still doesn't allow you to take 10 on another check if you're in a stressful situation. You must make the check normally. And if the concentration check fails, the related action also automatically fails. Concentration DC and distraction. 10 plus damage dealt. Damage during the action. 2. Okay, so this has a concentration DC has a 1 by it. 1. If you are trying to cast, concentrate on, or direct a spell, when the distraction occurs, add the level of the spell to the indicated DC. 2. Such as during casting of a spell with a casting time of 1 round or more, or the execution of an activity that takes more than a single full round action, such as disable device. Also, damage stemming from an attack of opportunity or ready to attack made in response to the spell being cast, and for spells with a casting time of 1 action, or the action being taken for activities requiring no more than a full round action. See also distracting spellcasters, page 160. And 3 is such as from acid arrow, and 4, if the spell allows no save, use the save DC it would have if it did allow a save. How do you figure that? Plus 10 plus damage dealt. Damage during the action, such as during the casting of a spell, or the casting time of 1 round or more. 10 plus half of continuous. Taking continuous damage during the damage dealt last dealt action. Casting a spell at a casting time of 1 round or more, or the execution of an activity that takes more than a single full round action. Distracting spell save DC. Distracted by non-damaging spell. If the spell allows no save. Distracting spell save DC. 10. Vigorous motion on a moving mount. Action such as from acid arrow. A vigorous motion on a moving mount, taking a bouncy wagon ride in a small boat in rough water, below decks in a storm-tossed ship. Concentration DC 15. Violent motion on a galloping horse, taking very rough wagon ride in a small boat in rapids on the deck of a storm-tossed ship. 20. Extraordinarily violent motion, like an earthquake. 15. Entangled. 20. Grappling or pinned. You can cast only spells without somatic components for which you have any required material component in hand. 5. Weather is a high wind carrying blinding rain or sleet. Like currently, the bards are on a bridge that's being drenched in rain and being attacked by water elementals. Weather is wind-driven hail, dust, or debris. Distracting spell save DC. Weather caused by a spell such as Storm of Vengeance. 4. If the spell allows no save, use save DC as if it did. A character with a combat casting feat gets a +4 bonus on concentration checks made to cast a spell or use a spell-like ability while on the defensive or while grappling or pinned. Combat casting feat. That sounds like something you need. You could just grapple the wizard. Craft intelligence. Like knowledge, perform, and profession, craft is actually a number of separate skills. You can have several craft skills, each with its own ranks, each purchased as a separate skill. A craft skill is specifically focused on creating something. If nothing is created by the endeavor, it probably falls under the heading of a profession skill. Cardguard games trying to use his brewer's profession where it doesn't belong. Check. You can practice your trade and make a decent living, earning about half your check result in gold pieces per week of dedicated work. You can know how to use the tools of your trade, how to perform the craft's daily tasks, how to supervise untrained helpers, and how to handle common problems. Untrained laborers and assistants earn an average of 1 silver piece per day. The basic function of the craft skill, however, is to allow you to make an item of the appropriate type. The DC depends on the complexity of the item to be created. The DC, your check result, and the price of the item determine how long it takes to make a particular item. The item's finished price also determines the cost of raw materials. In some cases, the fabricate spell can be used to achieve the results of a craft check with no actual check involved. However, you must make an appropriate craft check when using the spell to make articles requiring a high degree of craftsmanship. A successful craft check related to woodworking, in conjunction with the casting of the ironwood spell, enables you to make wooden items that have the strength of steel. Woodworking. The character that's on woodwork. I keep imagining a druid as a leather worker, but I think a druid would be a woodworker because druid has to do with trees. They'd be better off with the ranger. The barbarian was the leather worker. Working leather is hard. I've done it. I have, in fact, done some leather working. It is hard. I like the idea, though, of a leshy. That's a druid. That's a leather worker. Or a dryad. But yeah, I love the idea of a leshy. A vine leshy. Being a leather worker, that's just definitely want to draw that Pathfinder character. I mean, I practice drawing. When casting the spell Minor Creation, you must succeed on an appropriate craft check to make a complex item. All crafts require artisans' tools to give the best chance of success. If improvised tools are used, the check is made with a -2 circumstance penalty. On the other hand, masterwork artisan tools provide a +2 circumstance bonus on the check. To determine how much time and money it takes to make an item, follow these steps. Find the item's price. Put the price in silver pieces. 1 gold piece equals 10 silver pieces. So a silver piece is 1/10 the price of a gold piece, or value of a gold piece. Find the DC from the table below. Like a coin maker. Dwarven coin maker somewhere. Pay 1/3 of the item's price for the cost of raw materials. Make an appropriate craft check representing 1 week's work. If the check succeeds, multiply your check result by the DC. If the result times the DC equals the price of the item in SP, then you have completed the item. If the result times the DC equals double or triple the price of the item in silver pieces, then you completed the task in 1/2 or 1/3 of the time. Okay. Make an appropriate craft check. The check succeeds. Multiply your check result by the DC. If the result multiplies the DC equals the price of the item in silver pieces. Price of the item in silver pieces. Okay, so make an appropriate craft check representing 1 week's work. If the check succeeds, multiply your check result by the DC. If the result times the DC equals the price of the item in silver pieces, then you have completed the item. If the result times the DC equals double or triple the price of the item in silver pieces, then you completed the task in 1/2 or 1/3 of the time. Other multiples of the DC reduce the time in the same manner. If the result times the DC doesn't equal the price, then it represents the progress you've made this week. Record the result and make a new craft check for the next week. Each week, you make more progress until your total reaches the price of the item in silver pieces. I need to just write a bunch of characters doing stuff. Write little stories and draw little comics. If you fail a check by 4 or less, you make no progress this week. If you fail by 5 or more, you ruin half the raw materials and have to pay half the original raw material cost again. I did that. Except I couldn't just get new raw materials. Ruined the pelt of my favorite dog. If you fail a check by 4 or less, you make no progress this week. Oh, miss that dog. He died right here. Progress by the day. You can make checks by the day instead of by the week. In this case, your progress. He died. Progress by the day. You can make checks by the day instead of by the week. In this case, your progress check result times DC is in copper pieces instead of silver pieces. Checks by the day instead of by the week. Is it how many copper pieces is a silver piece? Is it 10 or is it 20? Creating masterwork items. You can make a masterwork item, a weapon, suit of armor, shield, or tool that conveys a bonus on its use through its exceptional craftsmanship. Not through being magical. To create a masterwork item, you create the masterwork component as if it were a separate item in addition to the standard item. And the masterwork component has its own price, 300 gold pieces for a weapon, or 150 gold pieces for a suit of armor or a shield, and a craft DC of 20. Once both the standard component and the masterwork component are completed, the masterwork item is finished. Note, the cost you pay for the masterwork component is 1/3 of the given amount, just as it is for the cost in raw materials. Right now, poor old dog. Preparing items. Generally, you can repair an item by making checks against the same DC that it took to make the item in the first place. Once both the standard component and the masterwork component are completed, the masterwork item is finished. The cost you pay for the masterwork component is 1/3 of the given amount, just as it is for the cost in raw materials. Repairing items. Generally, you can repair an item by making checks against the same DC that it took to make the item in the first place. The cost of repairing an item is 1/5 of the item's price. When you use the craft skill to make a particular sort of item, The DC for checks involving the creation of that item are typically as given on the table below. Action does not apply. Craft checks are made by the day or week. See above. Try again. Yes, but each time you miss by 5 or more, you ruin half the raw materials and have to pay half the original raw material cost again. Special, a dwarf has a +2 racial bonus on craft checks that are related to stone or metal, because dwarves are especially capable with stonework and metalwork. A gnome has a +2 racial bonus on craft alchemy checks because gnomes have sensitive noses. Gnome alchemist would be a cool character, right? You may voluntarily add +10 to the indicated DC to craft an item. This allows you to create the item more quickly, since you'll be multiplying this higher DC by your craft check result to determine progress. You must decide whether to increase the DC before you make each weekly or daily check. To make an item using craft alchemy, you must have alchemical equipment and be a spellcaster. If you are working in a city, you can buy what you need as part of the raw materials cost to make the item. But alchemical equipment is difficult or impossible to come by in some places. Purchasing and maintaining an alchemist's lab grants a +2 circumstance bonus on craft alchemy checks made. Because purchasing and maintaining an alchemist's lab grants a +2 circumstance bonus on craft alchemy checks because you have the perfect tools for the job, but it does not affect the cost of any items made using the skill. I will build an alchemist lab. Definitely want to build an alchemist lab. A little gnome wizard character. That would be great. Little gnome wizard. Synergy. If you have 5 ranks in a craft skill, you get a +2 bonus on appraise checks related to items made with that craft skill. Decipher script. Intelligence trained on. Check. You can decipher writing in an unfamiliar language or a message written in an incomplete or archaic form. The base DC is 20 for the simplest messages, 25 for standard text, and 30 or higher for intricate, exotic, or very old writing. Hieroglyphics. If the check exceeds, you understand the general content of a piece of writing about 1 page long, or the equivalent. If the check fails, like the librarian character in Mummy. She can read hieroglyphics and hieratic. Yeah, she's a cool character. If the check succeeds, you understand the general content of a piece of writing about 1 page long, or the equivalent. If the check fails, make a DC 5 wisdom check to see if you avoid drawing a false conclusion about text. Success means that you do not draw a false conclusion. Failure means that you do. Okay, item. Acid, craft skill, alchemy, craft DC 15. Alchemist fire, smoke stick, or tender twig, alchemy 20. You must be a spellcaster to craft these items, and traps have their own rules for construction. Antitoxin, sun rod, tanglefoot bag, or thunderstone. Alchemy craft DC 25. Armor or shield, armor smithing. 10 plus AC bonus. Longbow or short bow. Bow making 12. Composite longbow or composite short bow. Bow making 15. Composite longbow or composite short bow with high stretching. Crossbow. Weaponsmithing 15. Simple melee or thrown weapon. Weaponsmithing 12. Martial melee or thrown weapon, weaponsmithing 15. Exotic melee or thrown weapon, weaponsmithing 18. Mechanical trap, trap making, varies. They have their own rules. Very simple item, a wooden spoon, varies. I think whittling. Whittling ought to be a craft skill. Typical item, iron pot, varies. High quality item, bell, varies. 10, 15. Complex or superior item, lock, varies. 20. Both the decipher script check and, if necessary, the wisdom check are made secretly, so that you cannot tell whether the conclusion you draw is true or false. Action. Deciphering the equivalent of a single page of script takes 1 minute. 10 consecutive full round actions. Try again? No. Special. A character with a diligent feat gets a +2 bonus on decipher script checks. Synergy. If you have 5 or more ranks in decipher script, you get a +2 bonus on use magic device checks involving scrolls. Diplomacy, charisma. Check. You can change the attitudes of others, NPCs, with a successful diplomacy check. See the influencing NPC attitude sidebar below for the basic DCs. In negotiations, participants roll opposed diplomacy checks, and the winner gains the advantage. Opposed checks also resolve situations when 2 advocates or diplomats plead opposite cases in a hearing before a third party. Action. Changing others' attitudes with diplomacy generally takes at least 1 full minute. 10 consecutive 4-round actions. Initial attitude. New attitude DC to achieve. Hostile less than 20, unfriendly 20, indifferent 25, friendly 35, and helpful 50. Unfriendly less than 5, 15, 25, 40. Indifferent less than 1, 15, 30. Friendly less than 1, 120. Helpful less than 1. Initial attitude. They start out as helpful. Be polite to them, and it's all good. Attitude. Hostile means will take risks to hurt you. Possible actions: attack, interfere, berate, flee. Unfriendly wishes you ill. Mislead, gossip, avoid, watch suspiciously, insult. Indifferent doesn't much care. Socially expected interaction. Friendly wishes you well. Chat, advise, offer limited help, will advocate. Helpful will take risks to help you and protect, back up, heal, and aid. In some situations, this time requirement may greatly increase. A rush diplomacy check can be made as a full round action, but you take a -10 penalty on the check. Try again. Optional, but not recommended, because retries usually do not work. Even if the initial diplomacy check succeeds, the other character can be persuaded only so far, and a retry may do more harm than good. If the initial check fails, the other character has probably become more firmly committed to his position, and the retry is futile. Special. A half-elf has a +2 racial bonus on diplomacy checks. If you have the negotiator feat, you get a +2 bonus on diplomacy checks. Synergy. If you have 5 or more ranks in bluff, knowledge, nobility, and royalty, or sense motive, you get a +2 bonus on diplomacy checks. Influencing non-player character attitudes. Use the table above to determine the effectiveness of diplomacy checks or charisma checks made to influence the attitude of a non-player character, or wild empathy checks made to influence the attitude of an animal or magical beast. I made a character sheet where Lion Lady was a half elf, so she gets the +2 bonus to diplomacy checks. Disable device. Intelligence trained only. Check. The disable device check is made secretly so that you don't necessarily know whether you've succeeded. The DC depends on how tricky the device is. Disabling or rigging or jamming a fairly simple device has a DC of 10. More intricate and complex devices have higher DCs. If the check succeeds, you disable the device. If it fails by 4 or less, you have failed, but can try again. If you fail by 5 or more, something goes wrong. If the device is a trap, you spring it. If you're attempting some sort of sabotage, you think the device is disabled, but it still works normally. You also can rig simple devices such as saddles or wagon wheels to work normally for a while and then fail or fall off sometime later, usually after 1d4 rounds or minutes of use. Action. The amount of time needed to make a disabled device check depends on the task, as noted below. Disabling a simple device takes 1 round and is a full round action. An intricate or complex device requires 1d4 or 2d4 rounds. Try again. Varies. You can retry if you have missed the check by 4 or less, though you must be aware that you have failed in order to try again. Special. If you have the nimble fingers feat, you get a +2 bonus on disabled device checks. A rogue who beats a trap's DC by 10 or more can study the trap, figure out how it works, and bypass it along with her companions, without disarming it. Restriction. Rogues and other characters with the trap finding class feature can disarm magic traps. A magic trap generally has a DC of 25 plus the spell level of the magic used to create it. Device. Simple. 1 round. DC 10. Example, jam a lock. Tricky. 1d4 rounds. D15. Sabotage a wagon. Difficult. 2d4 rounds. Disable device. DC 20. Disarm a trap. Reset a trap. Wicked. 2d4 rounds. 25. Disarm a complex trap. Cleverly sabotage a clockwork device. If you attempt to leave behind no trace of your tampering, add 5 to the DC. The spells Fire Trap, Glyph of Warding, Symbol, and Teleportation Circle also create traps that a rogue can disarm with a successful disabled device check. Spike Growth and Spike Stones, however, create magic traps against which disabled device checks do not succeed. See the individual spell description for details. Other ways to defeat a trap. It's possible to ruin many traps without making a disabled device check. Ranged attack traps. Once a trap's location is known, the obvious way to ruin it is to smash the mechanism, assuming the mechanism can be accessed. Failing that, it's possible to plug up the holes from which the projectiles emerge. Doing this prevents the trap from firing unless its ammunition does enough damage to break through the plugs. Melee attack traps. These devices can be thwarted by smashing the mechanism or blocking the weapons, as noted above. Alternatively, if a character studies the trap as it triggers, he might be able to time his dodges just right to avoid damage. A character who is doing nothing but studying a trap when it first goes off gains a +4 dodge bonus against its attacks if it is triggered again within the next minute. Pits. Disabling a pit trap generally ruins only the trap door, making it an uncovered pit. Filling in the pit or building a makeshift bridge across it is an application of manual labor, not a disabled device skill. Characters could neutralize any spikes at the bottom of a pit by attacking them. They break just as daggers do. Magic traps. Dispel magic helps here. Someone who succeeds on a caster level check against the level of the trap's creator suppresses the trap for 1d4 rounds. This works only with the targeted dispel magic, not the area version. See the spell description. Disguise check. Your disguise check result determines how good the disguise is and is opposed by other spot check results. If you don't draw any attention to yourself, others do not get to make spot checks. If you come to the attention of people who are suspicious, such as a guard who is watching commoners walking through a city gate, it can be assumed that such observers are taking 10 on their spot checks. You get only one disguise check per use of the skill, even if several people are making spot checks against it. The disguise check is made secretly so that you cannot be sure how good the result is. The effectiveness of your disguise depends in part on how much you're attempting to change your appearance. If you are impersonating a particular individual, those who can know what that person looks like will get a bonus on their spot checks according to the table below. Furthermore, they are automatically considered to be suspicious of you, so opposed checks are always called for. And like in the Bard campaign, the one Bard, Bobby, disguised himself as as a miniature Donald Trump. It's kind of funny. It is quite funny. Familiarity. Viewer's spot check bonus. Recognizes on sight +4. Friends or associates +6. Close friends +8. And intimate +10. Usually, an individual makes a spot check to see through your disguise immediately upon meeting you, and each hour thereafter. If you casually meet many different creatures, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, Bobby played a whole concert and then disguised himself as Donald Trump and expected the others not to realize it was him. Donald Stoutman. That's my character. So, if you casually meet many different creatures, each for a short time, check once per day or hour, using an average spot modifier for the group. I mean, one of the dwarves did recognize that it was him, but he was a thieves guild dwarf. Disguise check modifier. Minor details only, +5. Disguised as a different gender. These modifiers are cumulative. Use any that apply. Per step of difference between your actual age category and your disguised age category. Steps are young, younger than adulthood, middle age, old, and venerable. Disguise as different gender, disguise as different race, -2. Disguise as different age category, -2. These are for a short time. All right, let's stop here. Pick it up again next time.